Hello everyone, my name is Mia Pierce. I am a peer success coach here at DVC, and welcome to today's workshop that is centered around self-care and healthy habits, because you need to be okay before you're great. So just to kind of organize this presentation up, we'll be going over just a couple of quick introductory things, types of self-care, how to get started on your journey to self-care, and maybe just some time towards the end to reflect on things. So I will be saying things like, feel free to pause whenever we get to certain points where it might be a good time for us to think about our situations and how we could better improve upon them and whatnot. So, bit of a disclaimer before we move forward. Alright, so to start off with, life is stressful. Sometimes there's just a whole bunch of things we can't seem to control. However, identifying what you feel and why you feel it is the first step in ensuring your well-being and success. And there are a couple of forms of self-care, which is nice. For starters, there is pressing the pause button in your brain. There's going to be more on that later, so if it sounds a bit vague, I guess it's better than having a small chunk of text in this place. I don't know. It might be hard to read, so. Second form is establishing boundaries and learning when to say no. This might be something that people might struggle with. Some people might have an easier time setting boundaries, so if this applies to you, by all means, feel free to stick around, and if not, feel free to move on to the next points. So the third one would be getting proper sleep. A bit generic, but there's going to be more on that later on. And obviously staying active, that's definitely a good form of self-care, alongside proper nutrition, and just being able to find some you time. So right here, we have a video in the upper left corner. For the time being, I am not going to play this video, only because I don't know if people here would prefer to hear the sound of waves, or if they have like their own sound that they want to use. I will be playing this, and so will the other coaches, if they want to play either this or other ambient noises in the in-person workshops. So for the time being, I'm going to set that aside and have it so maybe you can input your own noises in, customizability and whatnot. The ambient noises should accompany these fun little tips to help you calm down, especially in stressful situations. For starters, there is the tip of trying to be aware of your breath. I know that breathing is a very automatic thing that we all do, but sometimes when we get stressed out, it always helps to pay attention to our breathing, so that way we can kind of, I wouldn't say correct it, but relax it and allow yourself to also relax in turn. So it would be best to do 6-second inhales, holding your breath for 2 seconds after you've inhaled, and then do 4-second exhales. Next best thing to do is to close your eyes for a quick second and do a bit of a body scan. If you can do a body scan without closing your eyes, that's fantastic. I just add closing your eyes only because sometimes you might have the potential to get distracted by your surroundings, even though you're trying to focus more on yourself. So while you're doing this body scan, it's always best to keep an eye out on which parts of your body are tense. Once you've finished identifying which parts of your body are tense, try seeing if you can relax them. If that's not possible, or you feel like you can't really do that, try giving like a quick extra clench to that part of your body and then relaxing, and maybe you'll be able to relieve some tension from that. And if the previous steps are a bit tricky, or perhaps they haven't worked, try identifying a word that stresses you out when you hear or think about it, which might be something like homework or deadline or essay or exam or study. So once you've identified a word that sounds really unpleasant to you and you're like, no, I don't like this at all, just say that word out loud really fast for like 10 to 30 seconds, and you might notice that maybe that word you were thinking about is merely a sound. Although it is stressful, and it's always good to acknowledge that stress, being able to identify it as a simple thought is also very important. So just That should help you kind of steer away from having those thoughts consume you and potentially just kind of throwing you off your mojo. So, if you happen to like that previous exercise, we have Why's It Work, which is a free app that you can get on both Android and iPhone. You can just sign up with your Insight email as a login. It is going to send you an email through your Insight account to say, like, hey, press here to set up the rest of your account, which is just a password. Everything else is very straightforward, super nice user interface, and they have things like visualization exercises, body scan exercises, and kind of helping you restructure your thoughts so if you ever find yourself in a rough spot, you can just kind of meditate at your own leisure, which can range from about like 5 to 15 minutes. So you can actually select how long each meditation session lasts for. So if you're ever curious about that, the QR code on the upper right is a download link. So hopefully that helps. Now that we've gotten past pressing the pause button in our brains, it's going to hopefully be a bit easier for you to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are the limits that define your sense of self, preferably your best sense of self. And these boundaries can be part of any context. And we have a couple of examples here, such as romantic relationships, your work-life balance, familial obligations, and your time with friends. Obviously, boundaries are very important. Sometimes you need to make sure that you can establish your boundaries because you might need a break from family, or maybe you're getting called into work a little too much. And I want you guys to pause this video and to think to yourself about how your brain feels when your boundaries are being breached. You might already know how they feel, and that's good. You know how you feel. Identifying those feelings is the first step into try and make sure that you can kind of deal with them in a way that'll help you live a much better life for yourself. But sometimes people might be so busy that it's a little difficult to put your tongue on what you're feeling. Like, why am I feeling this way? What am I feeling when people breach my boundaries, or if I'm getting called in too much, or people ask me too much for things that I know I can't provide? So once you have that in your head, we're going to figure out how to set boundaries. So this nice flowchart here, well, I'm not sure if it's a flowchart, but this chart will show us how to set these boundaries. The first and most important step is to remember that you are entitled to your time and space. After all, this is your life. You're not really living it for anybody else, I would hope. If you do find joy in providing services to other people, and that gives you happiness, that's a totally valid thing too. Just make sure that you take care of yourself in the process. The second step is to approach the person or people and to be direct. You don't necessarily need to raise your voice or be aggressive, but if they're not respecting your request, maybe just adding a little like, hey, this is kind of important into the conversation might be necessary to get their attention. And once you do kind of establish a starting point for your conversation, talk about what you would prefer to experience instead, or what you don't like currently about an arrangement. So you can say like, hey, insert friend's name. I really appreciate you asking me to hang out with you all the time, but I have to do my homework and I would prefer if maybe, I don't know, you contact me on these days. That might be those might be days where I am the most available. And the last step, which is also very important, because you might be feeling this, you might not. If you don't feel it, then I'm glad for you. It might be a little easier for you to set boundaries in the future, but for others, this experience might leave you feeling guilty or ashamed or unhappy that a dynamic was kind of disrupted. Even if it was necessary for you to do that, it's okay if you feel shame, guilt, disappointment, or anger. Just make sure that you have some space and take the time to sit in those feelings and accept them. Just to acknowledge that you are feeling sad and disappointed, or ashamed, or angry. Maybe talking it out with a friend might help. Maybe you would prefer to just go on a walk or listen to music or write in a journal. And as long as you acknowledge that the feelings are there and you give yourself enough distance between yourself and the feelings, but aren't actively ignoring them, they will fade eventually. These terrible feelings. The next way to take good care of yourself is proper sleep. Sounds kind of obvious, but sleep is super important and will keep you healthy for years to come. That's not even hyperbole. Getting at least 8 hours of sleep each night helps you reduce your risk for things such as dementia and other neurological illnesses. And I think that's a very important thing to bring up because we are very busy people. Sometimes we pull all-nighters because maybe our lives are just very busy and we wind up not being able to have enough time in the day to study. Just don't pull that all-nighter if you can. Take care of yourself first because it might help you live a longer, healthier, happier life in the future. Sleeping also helps your brain remove waste from its tissues, so it has a physiological benefit in helping you kind of dedicate more time and energy to flushing out waste from your cells, which is pretty good. Sleeping also allows your body to produce more immune cells, which is also very good, and maybe why some people get sick when they get stressed out studying for midterms, pulling all-nighters while being stressed out while studying for midterms. A proper and consistent sleep cycle helps you consolidate your memory a bit more after learning something too. So, if you're ever afraid of not being able to get all the information, at least go to sleep so some of the information you get, albeit not all of it, can cement itself in your brain a bit better. And of course, the most obvious one and the most rewarding thing that you'll notice is you won't feel as terrible in the morning if you get proper sleep. Of course, that's not meant to chastise anyone who just can't get enough sleep because some people work overnight shifts, really weird shifts in the morning, overtime, have to take care of family members and whatnot. So if this is something you can't do, please don't feel guilty about it because you are just trying to take care of yourself in another way. And there are people here at DVC, counselors and staff members alike, who understand and empathize with that. If you're struggling with maybe a work-life imbalance, I personally would recommend speaking to a counselor, a wellness counselor, and maybe just going to the Career and Transfer Center, which is right next to the counseling office on the second floor of the Student Services Building. That's just a personal recommendation. Feel free to take it at face value or with a grain of salt. I thought it was worth throwing out there so you guys could maybe find some benefit out of it. So, aside from getting proper sleep, which is the straightforward 8 hours, if you're not in a position to get those 8 hours, there is always power napping. Obviously, we are all familiar with the concept of naps, but it is important to mention that long naps will disrupt a cycle of brain activity that allows us to dream, heal, literally, like on a physical level, and keep on moving. I don't know if people are familiar with this concept, but that is the circadian rhythm, where the body kind of has a bit of a biological clock, and it has a very specific time frame in which the brain cycles through different stages of sleep to kind of help your body take care of itself while you're KO'd. So apparently if you sleep for too long or take too short of a nap to the point where it doesn't really count, you might be prematurely cutting off a cycle, or you might be in too deep and kind of yoinking yourself out into the conscious world is probably what might result in that feeling of intense grogginess when you are waking up from such a nap. However, power napping is simply just taking short naps to avoid initiating the cycle too strongly, or just to complete one of those cycles. So there is a range of minutes that you can kind of keep in mind, and personally I have tested each range of minutes out myself and it does seem to help. So try taking either 15 to 30 or specifically 90-minute naps whenever you feel tired and if you can nap. Maybe taking like a 15 to 30-minute nap might be helpful if you're just working a very demanding shift at work and you happen to have a place like a break room, or maybe you were able to park somewhere safe and you can take a nap in your car, for example. I am hoping that that is a possibility for you guys. I think it's neat. So the next part is exercise. Obviously, exercise is kind of on the nose. If you want to take care of yourself on a mental level, taking care of yourself on the physical level is also pretty important. So I guess a starting point is, how do you stay active, or you just move yourself? It can be anything from kicking your legs, doing TikTok dances, or just lifting stuff around the house. Like, you can be a person who just happens to do a lot of chores and you find yourself like vacuuming or folding your laundry or taking out the trash or cooking dinner or, making sure that you're properly showered or looking after family members. If you're hustling around the house doing stuff like that, I think that would be considered a form of just being physically active. Lifting boxes around like you're preparing for a move, or you work for a moving company, or you're just someone who helps stock the shelves at a grocery store, that also counts. Doing TikTok dances and you're just coincidentally not getting the rhythm right or something of the sort, that's also physical activity. I think it counts. But if you wanted to think about anything else, feel free to just kind of think about it in your head and see if you have been physically active without actually recognizing it as physical activity. Poop. The nice thing is, when you exercise, it releases endorphins. These are the painkillers of your body and allow you to feel things like runner's high. Extra chemicals released during this activity help improve your mood and reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety. Maybe a part of it is just because you're so focused on working out, and another part of it could probably be those endorphins giving you the runner's high. So, I guess taking a jog to get away from the bad vibes is something that you could totally do. Another benefit of exercising, it kind of feels nice to act out any frustration without hurting yourself in the process. Some people, I understand, might deal with things such as anger issues, where they get frustrated quite easily, and unfortunately there really isn't a good place to release that anger, especially since you want to make sure that you don't hurt yourself or anybody else in the process. Exercising, whether that be through like kickboxing or going on a very angry jog, or swimming laps in a pool, or riding a bicycle, or lifting something up very angrily, could help you maybe diffuse that frustration, and you might be able to find some sense of calm after that. Because it is important to let out those frustrations, those unpleasant feelings, but some people prefer to do that physically more than they do with simply just writing it out or talking with people, so hopefully this serves as an option. Another benefit, you're able to improve your cognition, which makes sense considering that you need your brain to coordinate and manage your movements. Because you're working your brain, you're trying to figure out, oh no, I'm running on the treadmill, where should my foot go? And your brain is just working the entire time to make sure that you don't compromise your form or trip on something and hurt yourself in the process. So overall, it's pretty helpful, even if it is indirect. It might give you a secret boost on a test or something of the sort, but take that with a grain of salt. And of course, it might make sense, but it might be a surprise to others. Exercising helps regulate your sleep cycle and grants you more energy. It's kind of like training yourself to act smoothly. Now, to cover all the bases here, the CDC has also made a list of exercises that people with disabilities can do. Obviously, we all have to stay active to some capacity to stay healthy, and sometimes it might be a little difficult for people with disabilities to do that because a good chunk of physical activities are more so built or made for people who are able-bodied. So for people with disabilities, this list here has a couple of things that people can do without necessarily having to overextend yourself too much just to get a good workout in. which is nice because things such as rowing, water aerobics, hand crank bicycling, and simply wheeling yourself in a wheelchair if you happen to use one is also pretty fantastic. Before we move on to the next section, I thought it would be interesting to at least mention this video. I'm not sure if we would have proper time to go through it, and I am not sure how copyright works when it comes to TEDx, but I will leave the title of this video here. I think it's fantastic and it might help kind of ease your concerns about what it means to truly burn calories. And it's interesting to note that breathing apparently is how you break down the fat in your body, how you burn these calories. In summary, fat in your body is made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which reacts with the oxygen you breathe in through your lungs, which later decomposes into water and carbon dioxide, which you breathe out. The next section, proper nutrition. You are what you eat is an important phrase, given that not only what you eat will make up your body, but also your brain. Some fun facts about nutrition. Eating nuts and other things with vitamin E help promote stable blood flow to your brain and reduce the risk of you developing Alzheimer's disease. There are also other foods such as omega-3 fats, which can be found in things like fish. If you happen to be familiar with like a risk of developing something of that sort, hopefully this little list is informational and might encourage you to try and discover something that is not only nutritious, but something that you will love for maybe the rest of your life. Who knows? Eating unprocessed carbohydrates such as things made from whole grain, fruits, and vegetables give you consistent blood sugar levels and allow you to stay energized. If people happen to have a risk of type 2 diabetes in their family, I personally have a slight risk of that myself. This is definitely a good tip, and it's pretty nice because fruits, some of those can be sweet fruits like apples, strawberries, bananas. Being able to regulate your blood sugar with something that, in my opinion, tastes pretty good is reassuring to say the least. Lean proteins, fruits, and whole grains helps you keep your thyroid healthy. And for those who are unfamiliar with what the thyroid is, your thyroid is a gland in your neck that secretes hormones that guide metabolism, digestion, and also brain development, funny enough. Some people might need to have their blood drawn to do a bit of a thyroid test for things that are related to the brain. Fun fact, I guess. Be sure to get calcium. If you're lactose intolerant, consider, alternatives such as almond milk, macadamia milk, oat milk, etc. Personally, I am also lactose intolerant. Macadamia milk is a very good substitute for creamer in my coffee every now and then. So for me, it tastes the creamiest, but it's also got a good chunk of nutrition in it, so always good. Finally, and this might be surprising, take this with a grain of salt if you will, eat when you feel hungry. Sure, keeping a cycle is important, but you do not need to always adhere to the breakfast, lunch, dinner model. Just make sure that you eat. Before moving on to the next section, I also wanted to add that everyone is different. Obviously, we went over things such as disabilities and exercises that you can do to stay healthy. And although this workshop does push the message of exercising and eating properly, that isn't to say that you should do this so that way you can maintain a certain body type. Sometimes being a certain way is your version of healthy, and it's natural and it's just the way that it is, because not because you did anything wrong. There is not a something wrong in a lot of cases. For example, we got Lizzo here. I very much like her songs, and she owns her own version of healthy. She is very proud of her identity as a fat woman, and she still exercises, she still does all of this stuff, and it's not because she's trying to lose weight, it's just because she wants to stay healthy, and being fat is just her way of being healthy. It's her healthy. And the same could also apply to you too. I happen to have my own version of healthy, you have your own version of healthy, and I hope that maybe this little part of the workshop can serve as a bit of a reminder that, everyone's trying their best in life. I'm sure you're trying your best in life as well, and I hope that you at least are comforted by the fact that, you know, sometimes if you are fat, skinny, whatever, it's not because you ate something wrong for too long or lived a quote unquote bad way. You're just living, and that's important. The last thing you can do to sort of take care of yourself is to establish me time, because you always need to have a bit of a decompression period. If you can, make sure to set some time in the day to take that break. Psychologically, this is called an incubation phase, where the brain kind of rests, or at least it takes a break from trying to tend to a challenging situation, which can be like maybe doing your taxes or working on a very complicated chemistry homework problem. Fortunately, this sort of thing kind of allows you to sort of distance yourself, especially from those very bad feelings of stress you might get from working on something for too long, and you can just kind of come back to it refreshed afterwards. With that being said, do not try and think about that bothersome situation unless it's absolutely necessary. Just make sure to take care of yourself and make sure that, if you need to come back to it at a later point, you don't feel like you're going to spontaneously combust, and when the dust settles, you're just nothing but a pair of smoldering shoes. Now, with all this in mind, how do we even get started? And before we do that, I guess we should take some time to think about how you're feeling right now, especially with all this information. How do you feel about where you are right now? Are you currently stressed? Have you been stressed recently? Does life feel a little disorganized? Drawing awareness to our feelings again, especially after all this information, is the first step in setting out to create a healthier lifestyle. Feel free to pause this video, maybe around this point of time, to think about all of these things, and maybe to identify if you're stressed out about something right now, or if you're maybe feeling okay. A good place to start, after you've thought about everything, is to identify the most flexible part of your life. Obviously, you gotta start somewhere, but starting small is probably the best choice. For example, if you think you're open to trying new foods, experiment going to the store and cooking healthier meals. So I guess another thing to think about, and you can definitely pause the video for this as well, is what is a part of your life you think would be easier for you to try and sort of tinker with? What part of your life can you sort of modify in a way that allows you to do something new, or to do something that will help you take better care of yourself? The next thing, after figuring all that out, is SMART goals. So SMART goals, I am not sure if you might have heard of this before DVC or not. SMART goals are kind of one way to set goals and to better keep track of them, so that way you know that you're on progress to completing them. It's all structured, it's all organized. I guess that's the whole point of it. So as a quick run through, SMART is an acronym. The S is specific. So if you wanted to lose weight, you can be specific with that goal and you say, I want to lose 10 pounds specifically. Measurable, you do that by saying, I will go to the gym twice a week for 1 hour. You can measure that. You can keep track of that. That's the important part. So that way you know that you're making progress. It's attainable. So you can tell yourself, this routine that I've established will work with my schedule and my abilities. So you're not trying to go to a late night judo class and sprint at the park until the sun rises. You're just working at your own pace and allowing yourself to sort of gradually get through these obstacles that are in the way of your goal. R is for relative, so I want to lose weight to stay healthy. It's kind of the why you set your goal sort of thing. It adds relevancy, there's cause, kind of helps you stay motivated, especially if you get too busy and you're like, oh, what am I even doing anymore? And T is for timed. So maybe like setting a deadline or just a time frame in which you want to accomplish it by. So something along the lines of, I will accomplish this goal by the end of the year. Nice thing is, these can accumulate into bigger long-term goals, so you won't feel overwhelmed or lost. So you can set multiple mini SMART goals in a much bigger goal like trying to get a doctorate degree, for example. A couple of tools to help track your progress, especially so you're fulfilling the M part of a SMART goal, are things like planners or habit tracker apps. Apps, on one hand, can offer you detailed statistics on how you're performing, and it kind of helps visualize your efforts. Just for a bit of clarification, the app with the white checkmark on it, I believe, is called Habit Now. If you like that format, by all means, feel free to download it. I know for a fact that it is on the Google Play Store for Android. I am not 100% certain when it comes to iPhone. And the one with the griffin on it is Habitica, I believe. Habitica. And it's kind of like a mini RPG thing that rewards you for staying on track and, tending to your habits. And of course, paper planner. It never hurts to have one. Maybe writing things down is actually going to help you remember to do a certain thing. There definitely is a correlation between writing things down with your hands as opposed to just typing them out on a screen. So there's always that. This might be something that some people use, or it might be something that people haven't considered before. Getting a support buddy. Getting someone, either as a friend or a relative, can help you out because they are like an external second brain that can kind of remember and hold you accountable for certain things. So maybe you have a roommate and they're like, oh, didn't you say that you were going to take out the trash? And it's not necessarily in a demeaning or frustrated sort of way. They're just telling you and you're like, oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. And you can kind of take out the trash. Or if it's more tailored towards like self-care, then it's like, hey, do you remember that you need to drink like 8 glasses of water a day? And you're like, oh yeah, I do need to, thank you. I guess if you want to find out if that system is something that you might prefer a bit more, try asking yourself, is it easier for you to do something you tell yourself to do, or something that someone else tells you to do? Are you more able to follow through on tasks that you expect yourself to do, or that somebody else expects you to do? Personally, for me, I think that there are moments where the latter option is more effective, and that could be for a variety of reasons for other people who also fall into that category. Or maybe you're able to find a bit more confidence in you being able to remind yourself. It varies from person to person, but I think it's a good question to ask yourself every now and then. And a nice little reminder, you deserve to be happy. Even if we don't know why we're here in the world, people have value in this very small corner of the universe. You are here, and you've come very far. You deserve a break, and to be able to see the fruits of your perseverance. Keep that in mind, and maybe that'll make it a little less difficult to plan out your healthy habits. If you ever find yourself struggling and trying to set up like a good meal plan, or maybe just to set some time aside to read a book, and you're like, no, it's too difficult. But if it's something that you know is going to help you and that is going to make you happy, I guess it never hurts to try and prioritize yourself first in a lot of situations. Maybe a bit more than you might be doing now, or something of that sort. So, hopefully that's a kind reminder. Reflection. So, before we wrap this up, let's just think about one part of our lives we could improve. So, like sleep schedule, relationships, and whatnot. And also to just kind of figure out what you value in life, because that might make it a little easier for you to sort out what you want to tackle first. I think it would be pretty neat if you took some time by pausing this video to think about that, or maybe if you have a friend with you, or someone is watching it with you, or you're assigned to do something of the sort. Talk about what you value and maybe what you want to work on. It might be something that you've wanted to work on for a while but just haven't had the time or energy to do it. or it could be something that you just now realize that you wanted to do because of all the stuff in this presentation. And of course, don't forget to download the Why Does It Work app, so that way you can get your daily dose of brain calming meditation stuff. Just so you can be reminded that you are doing enough right now. Thank you very much for your time. I know this was quite a bit, as are all of our workshops. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to either comment in the comments section of the YouTube video, or you can find us on Instagram at DBC Basic Needs, or you can email us at successcoach@dbc.edu, which should be on the screen as we speak. Hopefully this workshop helped you out. If there's any way that we could improve this, or if there's something that might have concerned you in the presentation, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure to try and get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again!